ducks and tames, but welcome to KAUAI'S LIMAHUli, that's wave come in, and when Hawaiians greet one another, they touch noses and they, it's a breath of life, and then they hug. It's a very strong protocol.
Tell me about the wreath that he placed on the wreath.
It's just a traditional fern leaf. I can't remember what the name of the fern is, but it's a real important one. I mean, I think she's the Secretary of the Interior
See it from here?
of the United States. He said he had the Secretary.
He did, but that's not.
Maybe a state secretary of the Interior.
Is there such a thing?
I don't have a clue.
Maybe it's an undersecretary.
There's a lot of those.
Gail knows. Blonde hair.
Hi, welcome to LimaHuli Gardens. My name is Freddie, of course. I'm a volunteer here at LimaHuli. I've been a volunteer here for just about 10 years now. We opened in 1976, or I mean 1996 as a public tour. Although I've been coming up here since the early 70s. We were all hippies and Chipper was living in the treehouse. He's the director of the entire show now, TVG. So, let's talk about how this place started. This place started about 6 million years ago when Kauai popped out of the ocean as a volcano. When that volcanic activity ceased, Kauai began to break down geologically and eventually became a host of plants and animals. We know of only 2 mammals that were here prior to man, the hoary bat and the monk seal. And I doubt very much either of these 2 critters would have done much damage to our flora here. So what we have is a very unique environment where plants flourish without natural predators. Now, horticulturists believe about 400 seeds arrived here prior to man. Now, we are the most remote archipelago on the face of the earth, more than 2,400 miles from the nearest landmass. So how do you suppose these 400 seeds got here without the aid of man? Birds is one,
Ocean birds.
water is another, and wings. It's the 3 W's. Wind, waves, and wings. The 3 W's. None of them are bushes, thank God. They would have either hitchhiked on the backs, the muddy feet, or in the bellies of the migratory birds that come and go annually. They would have been blown into the jet streams that prevail over the islands, or they would simply floated in, most likely in flotsam and jetsam. So these 400 seeds eventually established themselves and eventually evolved into 1,100 very unique and different plants. Now, how do you need 1,100 different plants out of 400 seeds?
Finding sources.
Yes, indeed. Well,
He hasn't had that answer before.
it's in the papers. It's a daily argument now. But scientists call it adaptive radiation. When a seed or spore establishes itself in a hospitable ecosystem, and at one time Hawaii was a plethora of different hospitable ecosystems, most of which have all disappeared, eventually one of its seeds or spores will get blown into an entirely different ecosystem. So it's incumbent on that seed or spore to either adapt or die. So as these seeds and spores move down this ecosystem chain, eventually they'll end up way out here, a completely different plant from the mother plant it originally started from. So what we ended up with was 1,100 very unique different plants we refer to as the Native Hawaiian plants. And then man arrives. We believe our first migration of Polynesians arrived here around 200 AD, and we believe these folks came from Marquesas. When they arrived, 90% of what they saw here in Hawaii was endemic. So these folks had never even seen these plants before. And through experimentation, they found that most of these native plants really didn't support their cultural needs. When they arrived, they brought 27 unique plants with them that we refer to as the Polynesian introductions. These are cultural plants important to the Polynesian culture. So what do you suppose these folks lived off while they were propagating their own cultural plants? Exactly. This ocean out here is one big, giant refrigerator. And the Native Hawaiians to this very day refer to it as their icebox. They're very sensitive about how folks conduct themselves around that part of the food chain, because this is where these folks get most of their food to the table in the evening. So it's incumbent on those of us who are Malahinis, newcomers, or visitors to be sensitive to these folks, and of course the Native Hawaiian gathering grounds. So these Polynesians settled in and had Hawaii to themselves for about 1,000 years. And then another migration of Polynesians arrived. We believe these folks came from the Society Islands, which we refer to as Tahiti today. When they arrived, they took over. They slaughtered a number of people, enslaved many more, and they in turn had Hawaii to themselves for an additional 500 years. So what we have was over the course of 1,500 years a culture that evolved with no outside influence. Now, I don't know of a culture on Earth that's had that particular kind of isolated evolution. So what we have is a very unique culture of people here. And anthropologists believe that this may have been one of the highest evolved cultures on Earth, having to do specifically with their lifestyle and their relationship with Earth and nature. So they killed off a number of them, and they enslaved many more. They were warring people. And well, we're not sure. They arrived in voyaging canoes, and they probably came 20 to a canoe. I'll talk a lot more about these voyaging canoes when we get around the corner, and I can show you what I'm talking about. Matter of fact, over one man on the west side. 1778. February 11th, as a matter of fact, 1778, and that's when Pandora's box literally opened in the Hawaiian Islands. In that very short period of time, that's less than 230 years ago, over 12,000 plants have been introduced to these islands. So that's like the 11 or 12 to 1 ratio from native plants plus Polynesian introductions. So the Hawaii you folks are looking at today, 90% of what you see here is introduced. It's exactly the opposite of when the Polynesians first arrived 2,000 years ago. Trees. This is all swamp down here. Yeah, it'll be a lot more interesting when you go back to the visitor center after this tour. You'll learn a whole bunch. But that's a good observation.
So that was, what was that? The European?
And he taught that in Hawaiian culture, you miss a generation. The parents are on the field, the fields are on the ocean gathering food. Who raises the cake? The grandparents, the kupuna, the eldest firstborn. So that generation is skipped. So Auntie Julia grew up in her grandfather's tutelage, and she learned all of the Hawaiian manalo from him, all Hawaiian knowledge. So she saw, as a young girl, she lived around the corner. This was her playground. This was a cow pasture. For over 100 years, cows grazed through Limahuli, eating the native Hawaiian plants, knocking over these important archaeological structures. And Auntie Juliet saw this valley as a living classroom. She saw the archaeology, she understood the history, she understood the mana, the spirit, the power of this valley. So she decided to acquire this valley. She succeeded in acquiring the entire valley except for 5 kuleana lots. 2 home sites on either side of the valley as you enter, 2 vacant lots right here along Limahuli Stream, and a house right smack in the middle of the valley. Aside from these 5 kuleana lots, she acquired the valley, fenced it off, got rid of the cows, and in 1967 she started clearing this hillside right here. In 1976 made a gift of 13 acres of that hillside to NTBG, the National Tropical Botanical Gardens. That's how we became associated with this organization. And she allowed NTBG to use 4 additional acres for private property. These are the 17 acres we'll be hiking today. That leaves another 985 acres back there, which we refer to as our lower and our upper preserve. At the back of our lower preserve, we have a thriving native Hawaiian ecosystem, which is presently under very serious attack by these opportunistic plants that are rapidly moving into the valley. Then you'll see this. Once we get up above the canopy where you can look back, you can see how these alien species are taking over Limahuli. About 1.5 miles back, about 1,000 feet up, we have our upper preserve, which had a thriving native Hawaiian mountain ecosystem, which was completely devastated by the winds of Iniki. Coincidentally, September 11th, 1991. So here we have, so our scientists flew back there about a few months after the hurricane to survey the damage, and much of their flora they found the entire ecosystem had been wiped out, and the opportunistic plants had already started moving in. So they formed this project. They went back. You can only get back there by helicopter now. They carved out 200 square meter plots, reintroduced the native Hawaiian mountain plants, and in this study we hope to come to terms and understand the relationship between the invasive plants and the mountain plants, and the resilience factor of the mountain plants and the encroachment factor of the invasive plants. And once we come to terms with this relationship, hopefully we'll be able to restore that area. But of course, generations down the line. It's not going to take years or months, it's going to take generations. No poison in this valley at all. Everything is done the old way, the ancient way. So it's weed pulling and all that stuff. It's all manual labor, except for the helicopter that puts them up there. And there's about 1,000 left on the face of the earth right now.
Did the early pioneers like cook bring goats and pigs?
It was the actually Captain
Polynesian.
Cook.
Oh, it
Yeah, the
wasn't.
Polynesians brought 5 animals. They introduced 5 animals to Hawaii. They introduced the pig, they introduced the dog, they introduced the chicken. The rat came as a stowaway in the voyaging canoes.
Yeah.
And can anybody here guess the 5th animal they introduced to Hawaii? Themselves.
That's right.
They introduced man to Hawaii. All, as far as we know, because we don't know anything before written history. The Hawaiians documented their history in the oral tradition through songs, through dances, through chants, and through storytelling. And in the oral tradition, you can miss a lot. People misunderstand a word, and from history that point on, prodigy understands history with that mispronounced word, or the detail left out. And the missionaries were the ones who taught the Hawaiians how to read and write because they wanted to teach them how to read the Bible. So they developed a 13-letter alphabet, 5 consonants, 8 vowels, and taught them how to read and write. Within 20 years, close to 80% of the Hawaiian population was literate. That would make them some of the most literate of all
People,
cultures
yeah.
on earth. They weren't dummies, but they didn't tell all their secrets either because Hawaiians don't trust people, because they took all these Hawaiian secrets and abused them. And that's what's happened, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, Auntie Juliet is the key player here, but now Chipper comes along. Chipper is Auntie Juliet's grandson, and when Auntie Juliet died, Chipper inherited Limahuli. Now, Chipper didn't feel comfortable owning this valley because he was raised as a Hawaiian, and Hawaiians don't understand the concept of ownership. They believe they're stewards of the land. Malama ka'aina, take care of the land, it in turn takes care of you. So that's their indigenous relationship with Mother Nature. It's much different than Western man.
It's like the American Indian.
Exactly. And it's like all the people of Polynesia. So they had a much different relationship, and Chipper had that relationship instilled in him as a young man. And he didn't want to own this place because of its mana, its power, its history, its archaeology. So he made a gift of the entire valley to NTBG. But it took him several years of planning. And in this planning process, he stipulated if the National Tropical Botanical Gardens ever decides to capitalize on Limahuli Valley, like sell it, subdivide it, or commercialize it in any manner, it will immediately revert to the Nature Conservancy. So hopefully his grandmother's legacy will live on for generations to come.
Oh,
I
true.
doubt very much NTBG is going to do any commercial damage to Limahuli because this is one of the jewels on Earth as far as native Hawaiian plants are concerned. So Chipper kind of got kicked upstairs